We will just let everyone come on in, get all set up. Nice to see you again. How's everybody today? Good morning, Lauren. So we are going to ask for you today as we come on in. Also, make sure, please, that you have your name and the organization you're with in your window here, if you can take a second to rename that. And then also, just to get us going today, I would like you to throw into the chat something good that the life in the pandemic, the past year, has taught you, or maybe even something great that you've learned that maybe you wouldn't have had the opportunity to do had there not been a pandemic this year. So if you can just throw that into the chat while we're waiting for everyone to come in, that would be great. Let's see, who do we have here? Good morning, Mary. Hope you've been practicing. You're waiting for the bus, Mary. Okay, so Annie has had more time with her big kids. Yes, because they're forced to be with you during a pandemic, right? They can't run away. Julia's had a chance to have dinner every night with her husband and 2-year-old, which would never, ever happen. And that is absolutely true. That's a wonderful thing. You know, out of every challenge, something good should come out of it. Working remote efficiently. I think we've all been forced into that, whether we've wanted to learn that or not, right? Yes, thank you, Patty, for sharing. So everyone, if you're just coming in, make sure to rename yourself, put your name and organization, and then also we're just throwing into the chat maybe something positive that you've either learned or experienced that the pandemic this year has taught you. I think for me, I have not necessarily learned, but been reminded not to sweat the small stuff, because in the big scale, there are a lot of things that we don't really need to stress out about on a daily basis, right? And just being more grateful for the things that we have. I think it was a good reminder for that anyway, especially when you live in a city that's always stressed out, it seems. Okay, so also too, if you have, please have nearby, not for right now, but for later today, a piece of paper and a pen, or a notebook and a pen later on for the session today. We're going to be having a breakout group also. So we'll be back to our table discussions. All right, so let's see, Galia, do we have anyone else waiting to come in?
No.
Good morning, Jesse. Hi. Oh, you've been discovering new trails at state parks. Yes, absolutely. It has forced us to spend more time in nature. I think that that's also a really good thing. Oh, Rehoboth Beach. I was in Rehoboth Beach a long time ago. Hi, Lauren. And you've been learning how to take care of your dog that you adopted during the pandemic. Wonderful, yeah. And she's brought you a lot of joy. Okay, Jill. Hi, Jill. How are you? You have learned to slow down and enjoy more time with your children. Absolutely. Some of us might have learned how to become elementary school teachers too. Whether we wanted to or not, we also learned how to become elementary school teachers. Hi, Bria. Learn how to do so much for library patrons in a different way, and have met so many neighbors. We've had a dog walking group, and yes, we tried some new trails as well. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. We're gonna go through, I think, are we good to go, Galia? Can we, yeah? Okay, everybody's in. Thank you for sharing today, everybody. I'm gonna encourage you to keep sharing, keep participating. Today's the last day of the training. And we really love to have your participation and your cameras on and all of that good stuff. Okay, so today's agenda, just this so I can see. Okay, so anyway, everybody, today our agenda actually is quite full. Today we have some very specific goals that really have to do with running the program in your facility. We are going to understand how to support the creative aging program, how to work with teaching artists, how to use marketing to help with recruitment, how to support the participants and the teaching artists with tech support, another thing we've had to learn this year. And finally, we'll work in discussion groups around how to build creative aging program infrastructure to move towards sustainability of your programs long-term. A quick reminder of our Zoom protocols today. Please, if you can, keep your cameras on. We will keep the microphones muted until it's time to go into our discussion group. But if you have any questions, please throw them into the chat, and Galia is going to keep track of all of those so that we can talk about them during the Q&A session. Like I said, we're going to be having our breakout groups, so please be ready to fully participate. And you can rename yourself in your window. And if you do want to see the closed captioning, it should be up today. So you're going to go to the bottom of your screen and press on the CC button. And I think it's at the bottom right. And you can turn it to, you click on where it says show. All right. So now we're going to take a look or a closer look at some of the ways you'll make decisions about the kind of creative aging program you'll be offering to your community, and how you support the teaching artist who's facilitating the program within your organization. So once you've surveyed your patrons and figured out the right art form for you, you'll be hiring a teaching artist for the remote class portion, right, to start. Partnering successfully with a teaching artist is crucial to the success of your program. And I know this question came up on day one about a teaching artist and what makes someone a teaching artist. So this is what we're going to talk about now. So a teaching artist, well, there's this woman here, I'm sorry, in the slide, leader, not actually this woman, a gentleman called Eric Booth. He's a leader and pioneer of defining what a teaching artist is. And he calls a teaching artist a practicing professional artist with the complementary skills, curiosities, and sensibilities of an educator who can effectively engage a wide range of people in learning experiences in, through, and about the arts. When contracting teaching artists, ask for, of course, you're going to ask for a resume to start, right? Ideally, a teaching artist resume would indicate a person's experience working with older adults in community-based settings and provide evidence that the person can create a sequential arts program. Many practitioners of this work actually come from working from an elementary school or K through 12 arts education background. Generally, that's fine. Because creative aging specifically is kind of a new endeavor, and it's based on the best practices of arts education for younger people. But it's important that these teaching artists understand the nuances to working with older adults and are willing to adapt those skills that they've learned. You should also keep in mind that the ideal candidate will be able to give you an artist CV with a listing of education, exhibitions, performances, maybe awards, publications, things like that, demonstrating their experience and skill level. But please be aware, there are some wonderful artists who do not have the educational background to be a teaching artist. So on the flip side, there are artists who have never heard the term teaching artist, but actually have the capacity to be great teachers. I think this is important to keep in mind because you might find, at least for me, I know from personal experience coming from the ballroom dancing world, you might have some incredible dancer, fantastic, amazing technical dancer who really is not an effective instructor. So there's really a fine line between being a talented artist and being able to share that knowledge and share that skill in an effective way that helps people learn. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. I also think when looking for a teaching artist, finding somebody who has really attended a lot of professional development and have really tried to grow their skills. An artist who has tried to grow their skills on the education side as well is a really good thing to look for.
Yeah, I might actually just hop in here too, because with this initiative, and Kristen is going to be from the Delaware Division of the Arts is going to be speaking about this later. But we are next week training a whole new cohort of Delaware teaching artists in creative aging. So this particular initiative, you'll have a lot of resources to draw from trained teaching artists. So it's a really good way to start to seed these creative aging programs for the future as well, because you'll already be very connected. So it really is a symbiotic relationship.
Great. So once you've kind of reviewed resumes and you've zeroed in on some candidates, it's also important to get a feel for the teaching artist philosophy and really see if they have passion for this work. The most successful program develops from a strong partnership between the library and the teaching artist. When selecting an artist, there are intangible qualities that may set them apart from other candidates. Is this someone you can envision working closely with for a long period of time? Do they express real enthusiasm for working with older adults in a library setting? Other things to think about, are they willing to go the extra mile? In my group yesterday, I touched upon, I am always willing, and this is why I think it's so important to have great communication with your teaching artists, but I am always willing, if they want me to make a flyer, if they want me to send an email blast, if they want me to come in prior to the program starting and do a demonstration class. So always look for a teaching artist who's willing to really support the program, because you want someone who also wants the program to be successful in your library. Are they able to be responsive to people's needs, especially when we're doing virtual programming? And are they advocates for older adults? Of course, it's always good to have a good sense of humor, be compassionate, sociable, patient, and really being able to connect with their audience is a really good trait to look for. When seeking out teaching artists, be aware that some operate in art therapy and health and wellness, which is great. We spoke about this on the first day. Most likely a teaching artist with an art therapy background is qualified to do this work, but you just want to make sure that they know to approach it with more instructional goals instead of therapeutic goals. So what do we mean by instructional goals versus therapeutic goals? The difference is learning a new art skill versus improving physical or mental health. So the beauty about creative aging programs is that through learning the skill, through developing the art and the skills required to do that art, you are actually also improving physical and mental health, but it's kind of more of a side benefit. We really want to make sure you have a teacher who really has the goals of that art form in mind. So just an example of that, learning how to write a poem versus improving cognitive function. Through writing that poem, you are going to improve cognitive function, but the goal is for the poem and for the writing skills, right? Okay, next slide. So finding a teaching artist. So there are several ways you can find a teaching artist. As Annie said, we really are setting you up to be able to help you find a teaching artist for your programs. This is, of course, one of the most challenging aspects for libraries and senior centers. It's also the single most important element in the creative aging program. There are organizations out there, including Lifetime Arts, who can recommend teaching artists for you. We recommend that you also reach out to local, state, or even national organizations to help pinpoint teaching artists. Local arts councils are a great way to go as well. So now that you know how to find a teaching artist, how do you engage them? Once you found someone who's works for your program that you're excited to have to work with, how are you going to engage the teaching artist officially? So using the sources we just reviewed, you want to at least give yourself 3 teaching artists who you think would be good candidates for this work. Next, you want to conduct phone interviews or Zoom interviews. If the stars align, you should then negotiate a letter of agreement. The national average payment for teaching artists is $75 per hour for instruction, and then also additional fees for the planning. Keep in mind, a true teaching artist spends a lot of time planning and preparing for their class, as they should, in order for it to be successful. These planning fees vary widely, so discuss that with your teaching artist. Often teaching artists can be flexible in their fees depending on your budget and circumstances, and like if they're working close to home, locally or not. Also, some classes are more materials heavy, such as visual arts, for example, when you need supplies. Materials expenses need to be included in your budget for the class, but not part of the teaching artist's salary. Also, you can either give them a set budget in advance. There is also the option to reimburse the teaching artists for the expenses they incur to provide supplies for the class. But all of this should be talked about in advance in your negotiations. And after that, you get to begin your planning of the program. So Annie, you wanna?
Yeah, thank you. So on this slide, you'll see that this is a sample of possible budgets for 3 different artistic disciplines. And these also are examples of in-person budgets. This budget varies widely, but this will give you an idea of the possibilities that you'll see. You can see that certain arts disciplines are more material reliant, and that's where you'll see the budget for the programmer is very variable. Like Daniela mentioned, visual arts tend to be more expensive than some of the other art forms. So for example, you need more supply budget for a painting program than you would for a writing program. On the next slide, and this is kind of a really important distinction as you're moving through first doing remote programming and then in-person programming. And this is really, this information that we're sharing here is really been our research across the country about what's happening in terms of realigning budgets and kind of understanding that the price for a remote program tends to be a bit more expensive than an in-person program. And this is why. So I'm going to talk through this a little bit. But so this is an example of the teaching artist fees that you might find online. Rates, again, are very dependent upon your region. So don't pay too close attention to the hourly rate for their facilitation because that might vary very much between like a rural setting or a city setting and an urban setting. However, notice that there is a budget line in a remote curriculum or in a remote format program for curriculum development. And part of the reason people are including this is because curriculums are having to be completely adapted to the remote format, very much the way we talked about on the first day, because teaching artists are doing synchronous sessions where they're meeting like they would in an in-person class setting, but then they're also getting resources and extended learning supplemental materials. They're really utilizing the fact that they are using this remote platform and this constant sort of email, much more frequent communication with their students in between classes. So you'll see on this budget that we have, I'm just blowing up my screen a little bit. We have the synchronous sessions, which is really, when people are meeting week to week. And so that's $75 an hour. And that's for 6 hours, because they may just, in this class, they're only meeting 1 hour for the 6 sessions. Then there's that line for online curriculum development, because a lot of teaching artists, particularly those who have worked with older adults, Daniela can attest, she's got probably 3, 4, 6 curriculums already in her back pocket that she's been doing for a long time for in-person classes. So she doesn't have to reinvent the wheel every single time when she goes in to do an in-person class, because she's already done this. However, the online world is new and teaching artists have to really reinvent There's a lot more planning that they do with their partners, which we'll get into in terms of tech support. So we kind of honor or try to honor that time and that intention in their planning. Then you'll see what we are calling asynchronous work. Asynchronous work really is the planning that you would see in an in-person programming, but we're kind of putting it under a budget. I mean, under an umbrella of asynchronous work includes planning, like the actual, what am I doing in my lesson this week? But it also includes posting potentially resources. It also includes sending up follow-up emails with the students about how did the class go. We'll get into surveying and evaluation that the teaching artist does. And it also includes probably the communication that they will be doing with you on a weekly basis to support the students. So you can see that a remote program requires a lot more from the teaching artist than what we had in an in-person setting, where they literally could come in once a week, do a check-in with you, but there wasn't any kind of, other than their own personal planning, communication with the students. So this is why we really try to itemize it so specifically. Ultimately, you all will be working on your own budgets. Kristen will go into the actual budgets for the programming that may come later. So you'll be having to work within a certain parameter, but I would just encourage a real itemization discussion with your teaching artist as you move through these programs. And I even would say, introduce this budget to your teaching artist so you can talk with them. For teaching artists that haven't taught remote programs, they will start to understand their expectation for what they need to be doing between classes, for example. And that's why there's 16 hours of asynchronous work that we've designated for this budget. Again, you'll create your own, but I just keep going into the itemization sort of clarity around the budget. And I think it'll help both you and the teaching artists understand what the expectations of the job is. So in your asynchronous materials that you'll find on your portal, you will see that we have included a planning meeting template that you're going to utilize in your first planning meeting with your teaching artist. And so this goes back to what I was just talking about on the budget template. In this planning meeting, you're going to be discussing what the teaching artist will be doing and what the library will be doing. You'll also be discussing marketing. So while primarily you will probably be in charge of marketing the class, you're going to need some things from the teaching artist, maybe a description, maybe some images. Maybe you'll want their bio somewhere on your newsletter or something like that. So you can talk about all of your marketing plans and how they can support your plans for marketing. And then you're going to talk about recruitment. And so like the way that Daniela was saying, there might be a little extra budget, or you might want to make room in your budget to bring the teaching artist before the class even starts for a demo class. That might be another line in your itemization, because that could really lead to further recruitment, where the teaching artist does a demonstration class or does a demonstration Zoom. You can do all of this online. So just to have a conversation about what that might look like and how they can support your recruitment efforts. And then also you're going to really get into all of those details with the culminating event. So, where do you want the culminating event held potentially? I should say that this will also be highly informed by your student input as well. But you can start to sketch out those ideas, particularly for in-person programming where you might need to reserve space and get it on the calendar and all of those kind of elements. It's a bit easier in an online format because it's just scheduling another Zoom potentially, but you need to talk through all of those elements with your teaching artist. Yesterday in my breakout session, we talked a little bit about this next kind of aspect, of which I hope will be enjoyable for the library. So when you meet with your teaching artist, you may want to discuss different ways your library might support the creative aging class. We have seen librarians in the past use the creative aging class as a way to further connect not just the students in the class to the library, but draw students to the library through the promotions of this sort of creative aging effort. So at the same time, you can engage the general library patrons in a deeper way through building awareness and interest in future programs. So with some creative planning, again, I'm going to encourage you not to be doing this all alone. See if you can get a team member or two from your branch to strategize about how you can kind of lift up what's happening in this creative aging initiative. And it will start to drive folks to your library, and your patrons will start to invest in the programming themselves. So some of the things that we've seen librarians do, and they've really connected with their teaching artists how to do this. So they've identified books related to the art form the students are studying in the creative aging class. So, if they're doing a play, reading sort of, or a playwriting class, they might, identify play resources that they're drawing from in their class, and set up a little table, display of some kind. And you can also do that virtually, a display, with a web page or something like that. They've identified films, scores, articles that relate to the subject matter, again, and made that accessible to the students in the class, but also maybe there's a display somewhere. Additionally, they've gone on to host artist talks and related art forms. And so, if you are doing a memoir class in your creative aging class, maybe there's a local author that has a book that's about to be published. So it will serve the author as well as sort of connect to the class itself, and another way to draw patrons into your efforts. There's also a lot of folks are making kind of creative aging class boards. So you're just really you can do this virtually or in person on a real live board, and maybe in the entryway of your library, but that really calls out what's happening in creative aging library, what's happening in other places in the city that are connected to learning opportunities, arts and cultural opportunities, even older adult sort of clubs or things. So it really just starts to signal to your older adult community that you're thinking about them, and that there's really, really special ways that the library is engaging in their interest, in their learning, and in their creative expression. So when we get into breakout groups, we'll spend a little bit of time brainstorming, maybe what are your thoughts and ideas, or maybe you can learn from one another ways that they've started to specifically target their older adult community members through their messaging and through their efforts and programming beyond just this creative aging initiative. And I'll pass it back to Daniela.
Myself. There you go. Hi. So now we are going to talk about what I think is really one of the most challenging aspects of planning, and that's the marketing, recruitment, and registration. So there's a lot to consider when attracting students for your creative aging online classes, especially, and we're going to go over several aspects of implementation process that you'll want to be involved with to ensure your classes are successful. We encourage you to use all the outlets possible when marketing the classes for older adults. So there's, of course, email, personal phone calls. If you have a list of visitors that always come, you can do snail mail, paper flyers. Many older adults, even if they do access online classes, they still like to have something tangible. Oftentimes they say to me, can you just mail me a flyer, even if they go online? All of us, I think, are overwhelmed with emails these days. So sometimes paper flyers, snail mail is really very effective still. You might want to partner with a senior serving living community or a local senior center. You can use their meal services. You can put in flyers with their delivery and pickup services for meals. That's a great way to reach more people. Sometimes a physical reminder, like a flyer, like I said, is very, very helpful. And it also serves as a reminder, because maybe they want to sign up, but they forget. If they have something they can put on the fridge, it tends to help them remember to sign up. So think best about how best to use these modes of connection. Perhaps you send the paper flyer and then follow up with an email, or do phone calls to those you know who might need an additional push. I I have to do additional pushes all the time, especially with the online programming. So I do phone calls to my students. You also want to keep in mind, many teaching artists who have been doing this do have their own list. So use your teaching artist and their connections as well to help reach out to students. I call my students and I say, where are you? Why aren't you here? Are you signing up for next week's class? So you definitely want to make sure you try different ways of reaching out. Also too, I just want to note, although, I forgot the exact statistic, many older adults tend to use Facebook more than any other kind of social media. So if your library has a Facebook page, put it on there. Maybe start a Facebook group that encourages them to communicate to each other about the program and the upcoming programs that you're having. But there is a statistic, I should get that number, but more of them will use Facebook than any other social media outlet. So don't count that out either. So now we have to talk about the course description. Of course, as Annie said, will be created by the teaching artist you hire and will indicate the learning goals of the course. And we'll talk about some of the social engagement opportunities that will be encouraged between participants. Think about your constituents. What else do you want to add to entice the older adults you serve to join class? It's good to first think about what might come up as a barrier for your older adults to participate, right? There are a lot of barriers for many of them. If it's a Zoom class, one barrier, of course, will be technical concerns about Zoom, which may come up for people with regards to online class. We'll be going into the kind of technical support you can provide your students. Be sure to include those elements in your marketing so students know they will be supported and that you're there for them to help them with any technical issues that may come up. Mention to that all students will get tech support that they need through your library. In the flyer, encourage people to reach out, or even if they don't have devices or have concerns about going online, may be able to assist them to be able to access the class. For all marketing, perhaps they feel intimidated by the idea of making art. We find the terms like open to all, beginners welcome, no experience necessary is a good one too, will help encourage people to sign up for the class and establishing that anyone can join the class regardless of experience. Sometimes also keep in mind supplies may be a concern, what they will need to participate and the financial aspects of that. So be sure to articulate that in your marketing as well, that materials will be, provided for them, especially those older adults who are on a fixed income who are used to some other programs where they might have a materials fee. So if you are not going to have a materials fee, make sure you let them know that there won't be one. They'll be more apt to sign up. Finally, in this time of COVID, induced isolation for so many of us, the social connections that are a focus of these programs are a real attraction to older adults. Be sure to emphasize that when speaking with the class and to possible participants. And this might mean really encouraging, when you do the online programming, encouraging the fact that they'll have time to talk to each other. So make sure that they know that it's not just going to be a one-way Zoom training, that there will be time to chat and discuss each other's work. I think for so many of them that will help make them feel more comfortable in signing up for a Zoom program. And description. So we, and talking about the program in your marketing materials, work with your teaching artist to ensure that the description is clear and brief with a focus, skill development, and course goals. So everybody knows what they're going to expect. The focus should be on what the participants will be doing and learning, not what the instructor or the course will do. If using the description for marketing materials, consider using images that align with the community you are engaging. Consider work by student artists from prior classes that show both beginning and advanced work, or images of similar participants learning and engaging in the discipline. Again, you can ask your teaching artist if they have photographs from any of their past in-person classes that you can include in your marketing materials. Descriptions, of course, will vary on the discipline. However, the description should include the following things. It should run from 30 to 120 words in length, not too short, not too long. The teaching artist biography or qualifications should not be mixed in with the course description. You can put this in elsewhere. This could be part of the first day, but not in the class description specifically. The description shouldn't use abbreviations or art speak unless everyone knows what they stand for. Written incomplete sentences, of course, and emphasize the benefits to the learner coming from either the results of attending the course or from the value of the subject matter. Again, I always get from my students, I always get kind of testimonials, and I use their quotes and I use what they think of what they thought of the program, and I use that in my marketing materials. So that's also an idea to include. In general, the first one or two sentences should be engaging. Make the potential student want to read more. The following 2 to 5 sentences should be a summary of the scope and content of the course. Do not start with this course, you will learn this. Engage them. Include information participants will need to have before class begins, including the remote format you're using. If you're using Zoom, say that this will be Zoom, or this will be, if you're using some other format, put that in there as well, so it's not a surprise.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to just talk about a little bit of the imagery for your flyers or for your promotions on your website. But you can speak to your teaching artist to help you find some images to help you promote the programs. If you don't have any sort of older adult images that are engaging in creative aging or in art making work. But here's some tips. Allow the images that you do use to help define what the program is about and who the program is for. It's this show me, don't tell me sort of effect. And the large image on the left illustrates active engagement and people connecting with each other in the art making process. And in this case, it was a watercolor painting class. In addition, a good way to reach out to the diverse group of your community is to use images that reflect your community, including a diverse age group. The other image on the left, down below of the portrait, is but from the class that our teaching artist Josh Millis did, and this image was featured actually on the recruitment flyer for a creative aging program that Josh had led through the New York Public Library system. It gave some indication of what the participants will be learning regarding the art form, the materials, and the subject matter. The image on the right, pretty obvious, but the picture itself is out of focus, and it's a rather static shot. You know, the people could be doing anything, like picking up their bowling trophies. Really, you just don't know what's happening in the image. And then they insert, the insert is sort of this clip art idea that sort of reinforces negative stereotypes of the little old grandmother painting a cutesy, project, as opposed to really engaging in the learning. So try to avoid kind of stereotypical images if you can.
And I'm sorry, Annie, also too, just so you know, that AARP has recently partnered with a huge organization to actually come out with new photographs of older adults with a whole range of photographs that you can use, stock photographs. They've worked to re-envision and reimagine what stock photography of older adults look like. So if you don't have any that you can use, you can, what's the big stock photo? Any of the stock photo companies, they now have a specific, or you can go on AARP, and they have specific photographs now that they've created with that intention of having a more positive view of older adults in action.
That's wonderful. Thank you. We will add that to our resources for our next training. We appreciate that. Terrific. So, and then just circling back a little bit to what Daniela was speaking about earlier, is this idea of the flyer, whether that's a virtual flyer or a paper flyer. It really is still the good old fashioned way to connect to older adults. But here's some tips to really highlight the programming. And so there's a good and not so good example represented, but things like large titles. Again, the captivating images, which illustrates the art form. An intriguing course title, like we can't underestimate the idea of an intriguing course title that, one, represents what they're learning and says what it is, but also brings folks in. And then the description. And then always list your expectations. That'll start to build the recruitment and the idea that you're coming back every week, clear dates and times, the number of the workshops, skills to be learned. And then also messaging that really flags to the person reading the flyer that this is open to absolute beginners, or for people with experience in the art form. It should be like open to all messaging all across the board. And then indicate that there is a registration process. Again, that will really start to build in their knowledge that, oh, I'm coming for 8 sessions. And then, of course, your logos and your credit lines. On the right, just not so good. You can kind of see it there. The titling is small. There's no description and therefore no expectations about what the class is going to be, no registration procedures, no credit line, and the skewed logos, are always, just kind of turns people off from it. It seems a bit unprofessional. So again, we mentioned this yesterday a little bit, but working with partners is a great way to identify audiences for your program. And so if you're working with a partner, be very clear from the beginning about your expectations of the program. It really goes back to really having the conversations before it begins about what you're hoping to gain, the benefits of this creating aging program. So the most successful programs are the ones when your partnerships and your goals align and there's support from all levels on both organizations. And this is probably the key ingredient to your sustainability goals, is that there is buy-in from the person running the program all the way up to the executive director and on both organizations. And so often with working with partners requires a culture shift in terms of the kind of programming that has been done in the past. Leadership and staff of partnering organizations need to understand, again, the expectations and what this program is. So some initial tips are build a relationship with your partner very intentionally, setting clear expectations about this program. And so that might mean, sharing some of the materials. Again, talking about, a curriculum, showing them a curriculum, what it looks like and what your registration ideas are. Some of this kind of discussion and education needs to be done also with older adult themselves. And so this is what we talk about, the high touch sort of piece of this programming, is where you're making room and space in your day to really engage with folks in conversation about the particulars of this program. So recruitment begins way before registration ever even starts. So you might need to give some presentations or some talks about the creative aging and what it means. What are the benefits of it? Highlight maybe the expertise of the teaching artist in those places and talk about, what they're bringing to the table and how special that might be for your community. And again, going back to this demo class option is always a great way to kickstart the creative aging program. So go beyond with your partnership, like we mentioned yesterday. They attract new audiences and they can really draw people to your library, both remotely and for in-person future programming. So things to think about are, Jewish community centers, so YMCAs, maybe your interagency council on the aging, senior centers or friendship clubs, and caregiver support groups. These groups can really forward the email flyer onto their constituents via their listserv, sort of the way that Danielle talked about maybe your teaching artist can do for you too. And this will grow your network of people who are currently serving older adults during the pandemic and will help you get out the word about this exciting offering. Just a little bit about registration and creating a sign-up plan. There are several ways that you can handle this depending on how you'd like to serve your community. But this is something that you'll need to really ask yourself is, do you have a responsibility? This particularly will come into line because it can get very blurry around remote programming. So but this is just decisions you might want to think about. is, do you have a responsibility to serve specific community members, such as your local residents? Is that your goal? Or do you open this online class up to people beyond your local community? And do you want to prioritize your constituents, or would it be fun to allow others to join in? So thinking about a first come, first serve, maybe plan around registration, maybe it's a lottery, or maybe it's a community first. But in any case, a waiting list is key. You probably will always need to have a waiting list at hand, because in all of the creative aging classes, it goes back to the adult learning principles. There's a really self-selecting nature to this class and to the sign up around these class. And so sometimes that comes with a little bit of natural attrition. So you might see that you have a full roster of folks at 15, but then 2 or 3 might drop off after the first or second class. That might be a good opportunity to bring in folks off your waiting list. So just something to consider, but most programs tend to have a waiting list. You may already have protocols in place to handle registration events at your library. So this may be nothing new, but it is a good idea to remind participants that they are expected to attend all sessions if at all possible. So if a participant wants to sign up, it says, oh, I have a doctor's appointment that week, missing 1, maybe 2 sessions, that's totally okay. A teaching artist can work around that. But if a participant sort of knows ahead of time, I have a vacation planned and I'm gone for 3 weeks in the middle, and I also have a recital to attend at the end of the session, that might be the encouraged to say, why don't you sign up for the wait list? And if a spot opens up, we can try to accommodate your schedule, you're missing schedule pieces. But again, it's just reiterating how important it is to try to come to every session if possible. So with all of that in mind, you will be collecting participants' contact information as they register. And well before the first day of class, you will be following up with them to ensure that they, reminding them that the class is starting and encouraging their participation. So again, a little high touch in the beginning until folks understand sort of the goals and process of this class. Whoa, that was a lot. That was really a lot. So before we move on, I'm just going to take a minute to give us a little bit of a breather, to lift our eyes away from the screen and to do a little bit of breathing. And then we're going to get fully into how we support the remote programs, because that's going to be a big part of your piece of the pie in this initiative. So let's go back. Let's take our eyes up away from the screen. Like we did yesterday, we're going to focus on an object, but I'm not going to count down from 20. We're just going to focus on our breath. And if it helps, you can close your eyes. You don't need to keep your eyes open. But again, hands on your lap, feet firmly on the ground. And we're just going to do a little circular breathing. So just listen to my instructions and try to match your breath to my instructions. So we're going to breathe in regularly, breathe in and exhale, and breathe in and exhale. Now we're going to do it on a count. Breathing in for 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold. Exhale, 3, 2, 1, hold. And breathing normally, inhale and exhale. And one more time, inhale and exhale. And you can bring your eyes back to the screen, and we're just going to shake out our hands really quickly. We've been sitting in one place. Let's shake them up high. Let's shake them up to the side. Let's shake them out down low, and then shake out your leg. You can stand up if you want to. I'm going to just do it sitting, but I'm shaking out one leg. I'm shaking out the other. And now I'm shaking out my arms and my legs at the same time, getting all of that circulation going. And breathe in and breathe out. Fantastic. It is a big morning of PowerPointing and presenting to get you all set up for implementation, but I promise following this, we will have a break, and we will also have a nice hearty breakout session to start, really getting your heads around how we're gonna start implementing programs. But let's first move into what it means to support the tech for the remote program piece of this initiative. So there's a lot to consider when supporting older adults access to online programs. In general, what we're seeing across the country is that the host organization, which is the library in this case, carries the lion's share of the tech access support for their older adult students. It is important that the older adults have a consistent tech support person through the entire creative aging program. And this sounds like a lot, but we're going to hopefully give you some tips to make this feel a little bit more manageable for you. So the person who's being this kind of tech support person does not have to be an IT expert. It's really just about being available to assist the participants when they have questions or problems that may arise during the class process. So having someone from the library designated as the tech assistants will allow the teaching artist then to focus on teaching the class, and then the class as a whole will stay on track. And so we're going to go over some recommendations, but just a little background. First, that we don't have to tell you how challenging online access can be for older adults. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, perfect. And so according to the Pew Research Center, only 73% of older adults 65 and up use the internet. Now that sounds like actually not such a bad number, but, and it's a huge improvement over the past, but this demographic definitely skews to the younger, more affluent end of the spectrum. And the study also revealed that older adults often feel intimidated by technology and benefit from the help of others getting online. It's really just getting over that first hump. But there are major systematic barriers to tech accessibility, broadband, lack of equipment, affordability of devices, et cetera. So there definitively may be some aspects that you are probably going to be unable to assist because it's so systematic. However, there are a lot of practical ways that you can help the older adults get over that hump and start to cross that digital divide. Galia right now is going to put into the chat, if she hasn't done so already, just some support resources. So what she's putting in first is the Older Adults Technology Services, which is an incredible resource with all sorts of information to assist older adults in getting online and connecting. So I really check out them if you don't know them. They're now kind of umbrellaed under the AARP. Tons and tons of resources on how to help older adults get online. So getting into the implementation of the class. So once older adults express interest in the class, you will need to support their access to online platforms before the class begins. So the lead up to the class. So here are some ways that organizations across the country are including tech support in their pre-program timeline. So first, organizations are doing that assessment of what is the most accessible technology to use, such as phone, for initial contact with older adults. So this allows people to engage via a mode that they feel comfortable in, and perhaps some students start programming, say on a Zoom program, initially through calling in, and then move to the Zoom platform as they feel comfortable. We're going to talk a bit later about how to support phone-only students through the Zoom platform. Organizations, a lot of them, and this might be really beneficial for you, are doing tech office hours prior to the start of class, where older adults can call in, get assistance with the designated IT staff person to get information on the specific platform that they will be using for class and sort of practice. This is done before class, but it can also be continued throughout the class if you find it to be beneficial. They often have a tech meet and greet, and this could be a short meeting a week before the beginning of the class itself and have everyone test their equipment. So there's no teaching during this time. It's just everybody joins that's going to be in the class at the same time, and they get to practice on Zoom. Also, organizations are mailing out how-to videos and email typed instructions in all of your communications. They're also asking students to maybe send in the contact information if they're willing to share it with a family member that might live with them in the house to help support them getting online their class every week. Again, it's that idea of like, we can do it, but I just need some initial support to get there. So you might inquire about setting up a routine with inquiring students about if they have a tech support person at home. Also, we really encourage peer-to-peer tech support. This actually bleeds into the social engagement component of the class. We have heard so many stories of class participants being each other's technical support go-to person when they're having trouble during the class. And so then a great resource to share with the students and that you can actually utilize yourself too is the National Senior Planet Tech Hotline. It's listed there above in the slide, and Galia is also putting a resource link into the chat around Senior Planet, but they have a tech call-in line that you can call in during office hours, and they will help you through your Zoom at any time of day. Also, Senior Planet hosts Age Connected, and this is a website with a tool for older adults to find low-cost internet in their area, as well as links to free introductory Zoom classes, which you all should utilize. You don't have to create these Zoom how-to, guides yourself. You can use, they've already been created, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just go to Senior Planet's Age Connected, and they have all of those how-to guides that you can utilize, download, and share with your students. Daniela.
Daniela, you're on mute.
Sorry, hi.
Hi.
All right. So again, just to continue on with the tech support during a program, some organizations are finding out how important it is to continue the tech support during the class. This goes back to having a tech assistant there. Ideally, the teaching artist should not be managing the tech aspects of the Zoom meetings, but should have staff support for those aspects so they can focus strictly on the teaching. I will say on behalf of movement instructors, this is really helpful, especially because oftentimes we're away from our computer in order to demonstrate. So it's very important to have someone helping with the tech aspect of it, especially after class has started. Someone from the library should be, if possible, in every class. This might be a way to include maybe senior assistants provided by Services for Older Adults. But this person, whether library staff or a senior assistant, should ideally be the same person every week. So participants get to know them as well and are more comfortable in reaching out to somebody that they see weekly for help. It's a good idea to give students the staff person's direct phone number to call should problems arise, because it's a lot easier oftentimes for them to communicate with a phone call than to go through the chat. For teaching via video conferencing, visual and audio clarity is important. As we all know, the teaching artist will be aware of this for their own space, but be sure there is good lighting in your staff support person space and use a microphone or headset if at all possible. Check in often and throughout the class that everyone can see and hear well. Always the thumbs up is a good way to do it. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone see me? Thumbs up. And be aware that there can be a slight sound delay in these systems and that people will need to get used to that as well. Encourage participants to take their time to avoid talking over each other. If you're using slides and sharing your screen, make sure you're using universal design elements with high contrast fonts that are large type, and make sure any images are bright and clear and are also captioned. Remember to use closed captioning whenever possible, especially if linking YouTube videos where there's an easy option to turn on and off the closed captioning. There is also There are also transcription apps that can be added directly into your Zoom conference meetings, such as otter.ai. For synchronous classes, establishing and communicating routines and protocols will keep everyone on the same page throughout the program. Your teaching artist will establish class web conference protocols together, and your staff can support the teaching artist's rules during the class. Do they want people to be muted unless speaking? Do they want all web cameras on or off? It's up to the teaching artist to decide how to run the class, but be sure to help fully communicate any of these class protocols with your participants. Organizations often email the etiquette expectations prior to the first class and remind students of these at the beginning of every class via screen or slide share, much like we've been doing in the past 3 days. As host of the class, it might be nice for you or one of your staff to establish the tech etiquette at the start of every class and welcome your students. Following the etiquette reminders, feel free to use that time to make any library announcements you may want to share with the group. You have an audience there, so you might as well use it. Use the time as an opportunity to connect briefly with your members. Again, that also helps in sustainability of future programs. When possible, most organizations invite participants to begin logging on 20 minutes or so prior to the start of each synchronous class to address any technical issues and questions, and to encourage that informal chatting and hanging out time before class. Something to consider as you plan your program is that kind of time before. It's also when you're logged on 20 minutes before, if there is an issue with someone connecting, your tech assistant and the teaching artist can both have time to help get that set up.
Great, thank you. Before I move forward into sort of this after class sample support, I just wanted to give also a couple of tips that I mentioned earlier for phone-in programming, meaning those that call into the Zoom. It can be a little tricky, honestly, if you have people calling into the Zoom and you have folks on Zoom. So one of the things that we have seen teaching artists really make the determination once they see who's registered, and it may not be possible in terms of your budget, but something to really consider is that generally the call-in folks do very well independently, and the Zoom camera folks do very well independently. But if, say, you only have 1 or 2 call-in, which is generally the case, talk to your teaching artist, or this is a real place where the librarian can come in to support this, is to really remember to call on the person. You have to really identify the person frequently through the class by calling on their name, checking in with them. It takes a little bit more direct engagement than when you can see folks, because it can be really easy to forget the person who's calling in. So we'll just encourage you to utilize as much direct communication with them. You might also, give them your personal, not your cell phone necessarily, but a number directly that they can contact you if you're having trouble. Just other ways to kind of more, again, high touch engage with them. Julie, would you add anything else onto those tips?
No, that's exactly it.
Okay. Great. Great. So let's talk about, and then we're really almost to a break, and we're going to give you a nice hearty break after this. But one thing we need to really kind of reiterate too is, and we talked a little bit around the budget around this asynchronous work, is how do you support and evaluate how the class is going? And so what is this assessment and surveying piece? So post-class check-ins with students would naturally occur in an in-person setting. Often at the end of class, when students are leaving and packing up, they might engage with the teaching artist or the library staff and speak to them one-on-one about how the process is going. Oh, I love this. I really couldn't stand this. And so you really get an idea of how it's going for them, but this can't really happen on Zoom. So it's important to give students an opportunity to do this with the teaching artist. And it's also important that you have an opportunity to check in on the tech issues that might be arising. And so We have seen that teaching artists often take the lead on surveying students, if this is part of their asynchronous budget, after each class via email to determine how the class is doing in terms of their artistic and learning process, basically the curricular elements. And ideally, your communication should be streamlined with your teaching artists so you're not bombarding the students with emails. So really just having a conversation with the teaching artist about what is the process. So if they are checking in curricularly, is the organization checking in on tech, or is maybe the teaching artist checking in and being the kind of communication thread with the students, but reporting back to you about tech issues that you then may be addressing separately. However you decide to do it, just knowing that there needs to be an ongoing sort of check-in, often led by the teaching artist, but talk with your teaching artist about how you want that to play out. And you can go to the next slide. And so finally, there is really important, and this goes right back to the sustainability, and this is the evaluation piece. In your asynchronous materials, we have included some templates for post-program evaluations for your participants that needs to be adapted to your own use, certainly. And then also curriculum or culminating event evaluations. So surveying your participants will really start to give you the anecdotal evidence of the impact of the programming, where you can utilize this data, this information in your next funding sort of drives, also in your promotions of your next materials. You'll get your student sort of testimonials. You'll get actual numbers and data about how many people attended, how many people are utilizing the library more, for example. There's all sorts of data that we cannot underscore the importance of that post-program evaluation enough. You can send this out via email. You can do it also through paper and pen. You can mail it. You can use all your systems again to make sure that you're collecting this data. But then we also want to encourage you to do a culminating event evaluation with your audience, because don't forget that these programs really, are really elevated and held up through the culminating event. And the people that show up to the culminating event are also impacted through the programming. And it also serves as a marketing and recruitment tool for future programming. So in your portal tonight, take a look at the kind of questions we ask from the culminating event. And it also gives you an opportunity to see what might be the next class. Like, what else would you like to see the library offer? So we are going to encourage you to use both of those channels. And Kristen will speak later about any sort of expectations that might be with this initiative. Great. Before we go to break, we are going to take just a quick opportunity to address any questions that have come up so far. Let me run through to see anything that's come through the chat. Julie, do you have anything that we need to?
Tyler just had a question real quick. That is how long they have access to the portal. I believe it's for quite a few months, but I want to check and get, it's like at least 3 months. And I think it is further beyond that. And we'll talk about this later, you're going to be getting coaching along with your program implementation. I believe that extends, these materials being available to you all the way through that. So I can get a confirmed answer, but definitely they'll be available as long as you need them, all these materials. We had a question earlier from Jesse that I think is something that we can talk about in the Q&A with Kristen later. So I'm going to hold that one. And then it looked like Jesse had another recent question in the audience survey for the culminating event. I do ask questions like, do you understand the purposes of this program? Did this program change your idea or attitude about older adults? So during the culminating event, is there an elevator pitch we use to introduce the program and its purpose?
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately that will be up to you and how you do that. But I think that you utilize culminating events. What we often see all the time is people, sometimes there's a little discouragement. It's like, oh, we only got 9 people signing up. And then they have the culminating event. And then in the next event, they have 25 people sign up. So there's a real growth of understanding, purposefulness, impact, all of that happens your real sort of exposure to what this program, and probably the most impactful exposure of the power of these programs, is through your culminating event. So that sort of like, what is creative aging could happen happen at that culminating event coming from the library, and why do you find this important and sort of your mission behind it? So absolutely great time to kind of do your elevator pitch around it. Great. Yes, and Tyler, we are sharing all of this. The only thing that won't be shared is we don't record the sessions in the demo classes because they're sort of more intimate and things happen because it's a real class, but all of this sort of program implementation, all of this stuff will be shared, and you can share it with your staff, which will be helpful, I hope, as you implement these programs. Terrific. It is 11:08. We need a solid break and before we get into breakout groups. So we are going to give you all 5 minutes. So it's 11:08. We'll return. We're going to play some music at 11:13. All right. Listen to some music. Take a break. We'll see you soon.
Hi, everybody. We're back from our break. Can everybody see me? I think I'm frozen on my end, but okay, good. Hi, Julie, I can see you. All right, that's good. So now we are actually, everyone, I hope you're back. If you're back, once again, we encourage you to turn on your cameras and actively participate in our table discussion that we're going into right now. We are going to break off into groups, and we are going to discuss and have a conversation about really the nitty-gritty of how this program can be implemented in your library and then remain hopefully a permanent part of the offerings that you have there. So Galia is going to put us into breakout groups. And this is
there's a couple of slides we wanted to just go over first.
Okay. You want to do the slides first? Sure.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Sorry about that.
No,
It's okay. You can, Daniela, you can go ahead and start on slide 38.
Okay, perfect. So, okay, before the breakout groups, then we're going to talk about how we really planned the creative aging seeds. So here are some more ideas to either, start or maybe even extend the programs you already have going, which might lead hopefully to further exposure and visibility of the programs. This visibility, of course, can open the doors to funding and other streams of funding in the future. As far as building sustainable arts culture in your community, ideally creative aging programs are the beginning of building this within your organization for the long term. When you build an arts culture, the hope is you'll receive the necessary support from those who are in positions or influence to make a difference in how people value the arts and creative aging and just in your community alone. You're also sending a message to the broader community that the arts are important and older adults are vital contributors. The more involved the leadership of an organization is in the running and implementing of the creative aging program, the more successful inevitably it will be. A teaching artist running a program alone is 100% not successful. They really need your support and collaboration from the beginning to the end, particularly with the online classes, of course. The support of the organization is key and is why we're encouraging staff to be present in some way with every virtual class. Also, what are the supportive steps to bring more visibility to the program? You can post photos up of the workshops on your website. Again, we spoke about the Facebook, on your Facebook site as well. You can do a mini sharing for some of your members that might need to see what the class is like in action and might entice them to sign up for the next offering. Again, Annie touched upon that earlier, that sometimes, the first round might not have as many people signed up because people tend to be a little shy or intimidated, but after they actually can see how it turned out, they'll be a little bit more apt to sign up. So your second round might be even more successful. How can you inform the wider community about the program via social media platforms, newsletters, your website? You want to also document your workshops by collecting anecdotes from students, taking screenshots and possibly recording some of the Zoom class with permission, of course, of all of your participants. But then you can go back and you can share short video clips on your social media outlets of what is actually going on in the class.
Great, thank you, Daniela. I was just going to jump in here for a second. Before we get into our breakout session, this is going to be an opportunity to discuss. We're going to have our facilitators post some questions into the chat. Once you get in there, it's really going to be your time to talk about some of your fears, challenges, anxieties, assets. What do you have that is in your library that can really jumpstart this? So it'll just be your opportunity to use one another. But before we get there, I just wanted to introduce our breakout facilitators again from Monday. Jade Lamb is back here with us. She's a Lifetime Arts creative aging trainer, and Clark Jackson is also with us. Hi, Clark.
Hey.
So Galia, anytime you're ready, you can put us into the chat breakout spaces. We'll be in there until about 11:30.
All right, here you go.
Closing. So what I would love for all of you to do today is find a piece of paper. Does everybody have a piece of paper handy? And a pen. That's all we need, but a clear, big piece of paper. So, mine's just a notebook paper, nothing fancy, but nothing else is on it. What I'd like you to do, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do this, maybe even 3. I'll see how you all look. I'll know you're ready and done with your project when you put your pen up like this. So I'm going to enforce the camera. But what I'd like you to do with your pen, and if you happen to have a marker around or crayons, great. You can utilize other resources. Don't feel, compelled just to use a pen. But I'd like you to use, to write down one word, or maybe 2 or 3 words, but keep it simple, but one word that you can share and that you're going to actually show into your camera with all your artistic expression around it. But one word that represents a hope you have for your creative aging program in your libraries. What is one word or one that can represent something that you hope either your library will gain, your older adults will gain, your community will gain? So it's 11:53. I'm going to give us a couple of minutes. Put your pen up when you're done so I can recognize.
They should write it very big on the paper, right?
Very big on the paper so everyone can see, and you can decorate it and you can make it your own in any way you want. We're still working. I'll give you another minute or so. Be as creative as you want. Take a little time to doodle and draw, express. Okay, and if you're finished, you can put your pen up when you're ready. Take your time. A couple people still working, it looks like.
Great. And some people can't put their cameras on, Annie. So you want to just explain again what the word is expressing their hopes for the creative aging program.
And
They
we'll
can put that right in the chat.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, looks like most of us are finished. First step is we're going to hold up our picture into the camera, and you can actually, like me, cover the camera up. So you just see the word.
Oh, you stole my word, Annie.
Oh, no.
Man, you be
We can have
biting.
the same word. So, and while we are holding this up, oh, look
Keep
at
them
that.
up.
Except I did mine backwards, so it don't read the same.
And Galia's going to take a picture for us.
Yes, nice and close. Perfect. Got him.
Great. And so to finish up, because I know we have some folks that don't have their cameras on, I'm just going to pass it around the room. So I'm going to call on your name and you're going to say your word. So my name is Annie. My word is connection, and I'm going to pass it to Jill.
I think Jill.
There. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
I
yay,
needed
Jill.
to unmute myself. My name is Jill, and my word was connection too.
I'll actually direct because then we'll make sure everybody gets called on, and I'll direct. So the next person is Julie. Julie, what was your word?
My word was advocate. It was a couple words. It was advocate for the arts.
Great. And Jade, your word.
My word is smile. Smiles.
Great. Bria, what is your word? Oh, almost. Oh, she's putting it into the chat.
I'm sorry. No, I wasn't. Creative dreams come true. Mine was 4 words. I'm sorry.
Oh, we love it. No, we love it.
I didn't realize I was muted.
That's okay. And Julie, what's your word?
New friends.
New friends. Nice. Jesse, what's your word? Oh, you're muted.
Relationships.
Relationships. Kristen, what's your word?
My word is engage.
Engage. Daniela, what's your word? You're muted.
My word is awareness.
Beautiful. Rebecca, what's your word?
I had actually a total of 3 words, and I am just very down to earth. It was funding and trained teachers. Y'all can get all ethereal and up in the clouds, and I'm like, no, money, trained people.
I love it. That's okay. We appreciate the realness. Belinda, how about for you?
Enrichment.
Enrichment. Clark.
Connection. The right.
Yes, I love it. And Lauren. Oh, you're muted, Lauren.
I also did connection.
Great. And then I'm going to get my non-video participants. Mary, do you have a word you want to share? I'm not sure if she's there. Patty, are you there? You want to share a word?
I am here, and my word was also connections, but I was using it in 2 ways: connecting participants with their passion and connecting participants with each other.
Beautiful. Thank you. Kristen, are you still there? Can you share your word?
Yes, I'm here. My word was friendship.
Friendship. Beautiful. And I think our last person, Lauren McCauley, are you still there? Oh, you did it. You did. You just turned off your camera. Great. I think I got everybody. Listen, I'm so inspired and excited for all of you. Thank you for sharing your words and just your engagement. I know it's hard on Zoom, and we understand the challenge of that. So we really appreciate it. We want to give a big, huge thank you to Delaware Division of the Arts and Kristen Pleasanton and her team. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. A big thank you to all of the librarians and all of your staff that's allowing you to be part of this training. And then also to thank our Lifetimes Arts staff that have been part of the 3 days. That's Galia, Julie, Jade, Daniela, and Clark. Thank you all so much. Good luck. Be well. Stay in touch.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Everybody. Thanks, Kristen. Thanks, Lauren. Oh, they probably weren't even there.
Great. I think it's just us. You